Welcome to the Community Producers on Shaw TV. I'm Doris Wagner. As we slide into fall, this episode is a celebration of summer 2017. We feature two very different journeys, and we also meet some babies who love goat milk. And we meet a fellow who has a very different take on using an ordinary pool toy out of the pool and onto the road. But first, we are here at the pier in Campbell River enjoying the sweetness of the tail end of summer. Our first story is a snapshot of the end of Tribal Journeys 2017. About 100 canoe families traveling the ancestral waterways in vessels made out of trees.
Take this opportunity to welcome you to League-Wet'suwet'en territory, one of the southern tribes of the Kwakwaka'wakw people. And on behalf of Kwakwaka'wakw people, we welcome you. We welcome you to come ashore so we can feed you, so we can share our culture with you, so you can share your culture with us. And we can become richer for doing so. Thank you for traveling so far to come to our territory. Hela Kesla, Nina Muksi, Hela Kesla.
The nations that have traveled from the north and the south and the west coast and east coast are going to join up here, and Campbell River Band is going to host us in the most extraordinary way that they can.
Such a positive atmosphere where people you don't know will stop and say hello and chat for a little bit, and yeah, just overall positive experience, family experience for everyone involved.
I'm very proud to be part of this, and especially for the younger generation. They're going to be the ones that's never going to forget this day on, right? And then next year it's going to be in the U.S. again, and then the following year would be, who knows where it's going to be at.
Just seeing people come together, all colors, all nationalities. It's not just about us, it's about everybody.
This was a first for Campbell River and such an amazing celebrations of customs and community. Our next story features darling fawns who are getting stronger day by day thanks to the tireless efforts of volunteers who are feeding them something special. Mark Hanley explains.
Every season brings different challenges to the folks at Mars Wildlife Rescue Center. The construction carries on, but their daily challenges change. Right now, it's fawns. They have close to a dozen of them, and you'd be surprised how they got here.
Most of the time we get fawns that are kidnapped. People think that the fawns are abandoned by their mother. The mother doesn't want to be around the fawn too much because she has a scent and predators will follow her in. The fawns don't have a scent, and the mother makes sure that the fawn's very clean. The mother also has to do a lot of forage in order to produce the milk for the fawn. So usually it's up to 24 hours, sometimes up to 48 hours she'll leave the fawn.
Regardless of how the animal gets here, the fawns present special challenges, most specifically milk. They need mother's milk, which is of course not available. Cow's milk won't work, so here at Mars they use goat's milk.
One thing that caught me off guard personally is how many times a day they need to be fed and how quickly they go through the milk. Fundraising is always a challenge. We've got some very empathetic people in our valley that are coming out. We would never say that we have enough money at Mars, unfortunately, because there's always something that we can find that we can spend that money on. The community is stepping up and really showing that they care for what we do and care for the animals. However, we are basically year-round fundraisers.
Goat's milk's expensive, but it's not the only problem. Volunteers need to forage to find the right kind of feed to start these animals eating on the proper kinds of food, and then they have to spend time, volunteer time, feeding the animals, day after day. Some of these animals will be here for months. It's a major commitment.
At this stage, this time of year, the fawns are slowly weaning off of milk, and we're now collecting forage for them. So at this phase now we have volunteers running around and collecting proper forage for them.
The Mars Wildlife Center is not accepting visitors at this time. They still have a lot of construction to do. If you want to help, check out their website. For Shaw TV in the Comox Valley, I'm Mark Hanley.
Mars is always looking for volunteers. You can visit their website to see how to get involved. We'll be right back after we take a look at these spotlights.
Request access to air your content on the community producers. Volunteer with us. Join a free TV workshop. Check out these websites.
With our CVCF grant, Habitat for Humanity Vancouver Island North purchased a bus to offer our volunteers a ride to our home building projects, as well as provide transportation for many other Comox Valley events, like the Vancouver Island Music Fest.
Next is a man who's using a pool noodle to arrive safely at work. Community producer Sue Vince from the Comox Cycling Coalition brings us this story.
It's not about high vis, it's about movement, it's about being seen and being acknowledged.
This is Brian. He's a flight engineer in the military, and he's on his way to work. You may have noticed him. He's the person that rides with a pool noodle attached to his bike.
And I have cars buzzing me all the time that come within centimeters of me. I've been ticked twice by mirrors on my helmet from vehicles going by. You must give a safe distance to a person riding a bike. It's quite intimidating sometimes. And I don't usually get intimidated. So a few years ago I saw an article, I believe it was in a newspaper, but it could have been online. But the buddy in Toronto was commuting to work and getting buzzed by cars all the time, so he said enough of that. So he put a pool noodle on the back of his bike. So I said, well, that's a very smart idea. So for $5, I have a pool noodle on my bike and cars are magically scared of it. I don't know why or how, but they just stay away now.
When sharing the road, a car driver passing a person on a bike should allow at least 1 meter of space between them. Brian's pool noodle acts as a visual reference to help car drivers pass at a safe distance away.
They've just enacted some laws in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Ontario. The vehicles must pass by a meter. It's less than a meter off the edge of my pannier to the tip of that. So if a car comes closer than that, that's too close.
Brian is committed to bicycle safety education. He is also part of a team that advocates for active travel by bike.
I've been a member of the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition since its inception, since its first meeting. About 3 or 4 years into it, I decided to run to be a board member. So the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition is about advocacy for safe cycling in the Comox Valley. We advocate for riding a bicycle is a reasonable thing to do. The other thing the coalition does is about education. We've done bicycle rodeos for over 3,000 children in the valley so far over the last couple of years, and we've had cycling skill courses that we do for adults all the way up to, I think our oldest student was 82 years old. We teach people how to maneuver in traffic, how to be part of traffic if that's part of the way that we have to live here to ride our bicycles. But our main goal is to advocate for safe cycling in the valley, put in the infrastructure, make sure that people are aware that they see us when we're riding our bikes.
Thanks to the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition to remind us to keep a safe distance from cyclists. Our next story takes us up, way up, on a historical route to the Outer Islands. Fasten your seatbelts.
Estuary at Coral Air, and we're about to go on the mail run. Now that's a pretty cool thing to do because we get to stop at 5 remote locations on the coast and deliver mail. How cool is that? Cortes Island right now, and this is called Manson's Landing, which is where you deliver the mail on Cortes Island. Cortes is got the second largest population of any of the Discovery Islands. There are 1,300 people that live on Cortes. It is a beautiful island and is quite well known for its petroglyphs that the Coast Salish Indians would mark the rocks on the beaches. We're not really sure why, but some of the paintings are actually very ancient. So it's very interesting to go walking along the beaches to find the petroglyphs. So right now we're on West Redonda Island, and there are 2 Redondas. There's East Redonda and West Redonda. I think the permanent residents here probably are about 7 to 8 people in total, but they get their mail delivered by plane. How cool is that? This is Refuge Cove right now, and we are considered to be the gateway to Desolation Sound. And I never did understand why they called it Desolation Sound, because this area is absolutely gorgeous. It's a great paddling area, but it's also a great place to come boating. Surge Narrows at Reed Island. Now this island has got a fairly sordid history, marked by murder, mayhem, and bodies buried in very shallow graves. Now back in the day, way back in the early 1900s, this was an epicenter for logging and fishing, so everybody had money. And they had cash money, or in some cases they were actually paid with gold. So you can imagine there was a little bit of lawlessness happening at that time. And not only that, but there was a lot of alcohol. So what ended up happening is these guys would fight. And then someone would end up dying, and then they'd bring in the police from Nanaimo or Victoria, and sometimes it would take them anywhere from 5 to 8 days to actually get here. So of course the bodies would disappear and nobody would know anything. So Reed Island is a very interesting place just to learn the history. Stewart Island, the land of the rich and famous. Way back in the 50s, it was discovered that if you went fishing around Stewart Island, you were going to catch some wildly huge Chinook. So of course, word got around, and before you knew it, everyone in Hollywood and kings and queens were coming here to fish. And that legacy has lived on, because now the island is mostly owned by private companies or private people, and they have all these big estates, including a 9-hole or an 18-hole golf course and an airline strip, which just happens to be private. So the island itself, you can come and visit, but you can't be staying in any of these places anymore because they're all privately owned. Blind Channel on West Thurlow Island. The reason it's called Blind Channel is apparently Captain Vancouver came in through here and he couldn't actually tell that that was a channel over there. So he called it Blind Channel. which they changed the name. They call it something like a corridor and that now, but they've managed to keep the name for the community that's grown up here, which has actually started and been run essentially by the same family since the early 70s. We're back at the Tyee Spit in Campbell River with Coral Air in the background, and we have had a fabulous day doing the mail run with Coral Air. Thank you, Coral Air and Mike, for taking us out today. If you ever get the chance, try it. It's the mail run. It runs out of the Tyee Spit in Campbell River, and you are going to see some fantastic territory in remote areas that hardly anybody ever gets to see.
An amazing adventure right in our backyard. And now let's take a look back at a Canada Day parade through the creative lens of Fox and Bee Studio.
Thanks to the support of the Comox Valley Community Foundation, Cumberland Recreation has purchased universally accessible toys for our Parent and Taught Gym program.
Thanks again to Fox and Bee Studio for their wonderful work. Before we leave you, Judy Murakami fills us in on the farmers market comings and goings in the Comox Valley.
In this paradise of the Comox Valley, we experienced the hardest winter with lots of rain, snow, ice, so farmers had a really hard time. It's really important to support your local farmers, and one of the best ways is to come down to the farmers market. You've actually got 3 to choose from here in the local valley. You got Saturday at the exhibition grounds, Wednesday here at Thrifty's parking lot, and Sundays in Cumberland. Vicki Brown is the director of the farmers market.
It's interesting that we're celebrating 25 years in one of the worst years that we've had. The winter, as you know, was very long and very cold, and so then we had a very wet spring. So during the winter we had lots of farmers who lost greenhouses or lost their winter storage crops, or lost hoop houses. Most of the times you can harvest hardy greens throughout the winter here. There was no opportunity to do that. It was just too cold. And then in the spring, it was so wet that nobody could plant anything. So produce is just sort of coming on now.
One of the newest kids on the block is Michael Anthony Lefty, who started up an organic farm, toadstools and hand tools.
We started farming in April, and we've been told by many local farmers this was the worst season you could possibly start a farm. So our field was flooded for the first 2 months, which was very challenging. We couldn't get in, we couldn't plant. So we started focusing heavily on our mushroom operation, which wasn't down in the field. And we had some moderate success with that. But of course, in your first year, you're always gonna have speed bumps. And then when you have a success where you get to come to market and you see people appreciate your product, then you're reminded why you do this. The toadstools is obviously for the mushrooms, and the hand tools is because we also farm in the field, and we're doing it I guess what could be called old school, but we like to think of it as new school, which is a return to doing things mostly by hand, low impact on the land, very little input of fossil fuel, and just enjoying working with your hands and being with the soil.
The farmers market was fantastic because I started a few months after I moved to the valley, so it enabled me to meet all the other farmers to get myself known. So it's a great way to market, to get the catering started, and that's it. So I think this is the start of my 8th season now.
Now, what did you do before you were a pretzel guy?
Well, I used to be an airline pilot, actually. Yeah, so I'm an air transport pilot.
And who actually does the baking?
Well, my wife and I bake, and we have some helpers who help making it.
And your son, he isn't here helping to sell.
Well, he helps making the stuff, right?
So it's a family business.
It's a family business, that's right.
Support your local farmer. From the Farmers Market in Courtenay, this is Judy Murakami for Shaw TV.
That wraps up this edition of the Community Producers. If you would like to become involved with the show, please contact your local Shaw TV office or visit our website. See you next time. In Campbell River, I'm Doris Wagner.
A grant from the Comox Valley Community Foundation has allowed Comox Valley Ground Search and Rescue to replace its aging rapid deployment craft, a boat used in swiftwater rescue.